Have you ever done something that seemed fun at the time, only to realize too late that you might have made a terrible mistake? That's exactly what happened to me and my friend one summer night. What started as a simple thrill, exploring the woods after dark, turned into something we'll never forget. And honestly, I wish we could. My friends and I used to live really close to a national forest. It was just a 10-minute bike ride from my place, and living in a boring small town with nothing better to do, we often went exploring in the woods in our spare time. We didn't know directions or anything and didn't have cell phones with Google Maps either, so it definitely wasn't the safest hobby. After years of going out there though, we'd grown pretty accustomed to the area. We knew the trails, the clearings, and even the spots where the trees grew so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. It was our playground, our escape from the monotony of small-town life. But there was one rule we always followed. Never go into the forest at night. Anyway, I was just 15 at the time, and it was the first day of summer break. Me and one of my closest friends, Jason, were celebrating the start of summer by having a sleepover at my place. We were probably just going to play Xbox all night, but just a little past 12 a.m., the power cut out. My dad woke up and tried to get it running again, but it looked like it was a neighborhood-wide outage, so there was nothing we could do about it. Neither of us were tired, though. We had literally just chugged energy drinks a half hour ago, planning on pulling an all-nighter. After a couple of minutes of sitting in the dark, bored out of our minds, Jason asked, "Hey, have we ever been in the forest at night?" It was a weird and random question, but it almost felt even weirder that we'd never actually been out there at night, despite having lived here and explored those woods for over a decade. Somehow, not a single time had we gone when it was dark. The idea hung in the air for a moment, and then, almost without thinking, we decided to do it. We grabbed my empty book bag and tossed a couple of flashlights in it, then rode our bikes to the spot that we usually entered the forest at. It was this dirt circle on the edge of the road that we'd always leave our bikes at. The night was quiet, and the only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. As we got closer to the forest, though, I started to feel a little uneasy. The trees loomed taller in the darkness, their shadows stretching across the road like long, twisted fingers. While we were there, we noticed a car parked further up the road. It was some old SUV, looking like it might have broken down, but all the lights were off, so we thought they'd abandoned it or something. We tossed down our bikes and headed into the trees. When we entered, we immediately had to take our flashlights out because it was insanely dark outside the forest. The moonlight was bright enough to illuminate the area, but inside the forest, it was just absolute darkness. I don't even know why we were so intrigued by going here at night. I guess it was just because we'd never done it, and we wanted to get a little adrenaline rush. It only took a couple of minutes for that rush to set in as we looked back and could no longer see where the road met the woods. The forest felt different at night, alive in a way that was both fascinating and terrifying. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves were replaced by something deeper, more primal. It was cool to hear the forest ambiance at night, and obviously it was a little creepy too. Our enjoyment seemed to dwindle down as we got further in though, and I don't know about Jason, but I was getting a really unnerving feeling. It was like the adrenaline rush had faded, and now I felt like something was actually wrong for some reason. The darkness seemed to press in on us, and the beam of our flashlights felt weaker, like the forest was swallowing the light. For several minutes, we walked in silence, listening to the now eerie and unnerving sounds of the woods around us as we moved our flashlights around. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made my heart skip a beat. Then, we heard a stick snap to our left. The sound echoed through the woods, and both of us moved our flashlights toward it. In the beam of our lights, there was a guy standing maybe 40 feet away. Jason and I froze immediately, knowing how odd it was for some older guy to be out here and unsure what he was up to. He had a black leather jacket on and a cap over his long hair. I remember his eyes vividly though, as they were disturbingly wide open, almost like he was staring right through us. Somehow, it took a full 10 seconds of us staring at him and him staring at us before we noticed a shovel in his hand. Jason leaned over to me and whispered in a nervous voice, "I think we should go, like right now." That was enough to snap me out of it, and both of us hurried away, going back the way we came. We covered our flashlights with our shirts to make them dimmer and less visible, just in case he was trying to find us. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears, and every step felt like it took forever. Eventually, we made it back to our bikes though, and when we did, we noticed that the car parked up the road was now gone. We hopped on our bikes and rode straight back to my place, not saying a word the entire way. When we got back, we locked the doors and sat in the living room, trying to process what had just happened. I really wish we had told someone what happened. However, I'm sure that even if we did, nothing would have come from it. We couldn't see enough to know exactly what he looked like or even what kind of car he drove. After that night, I stopped going in those woods. I think if we had stayed any longer or been any closer to that guy when we ran into him, we might have not made it back home. Looking back, I still wonder who that guy was and what he was doing out there in the middle of the night with a shovel. Was he burying something? Or was he looking for something? Or someone? I'll never know, but that night changed the way I saw the forest. It wasn't just a place to explore anymore. It was a place where anything could happen, especially when the sun went down. Looking back, I still wonder, who was that guy? What was he doing out there with a shovel in the middle of the night? And more importantly, what would have happened if we hadn't left when we did? Some questions don't have answers, but one thing's for sure. I never stepped foot in those woods again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the community for more chilling tales and creepy adventures. Stay tuned for what's next.